Breaking news just hit and the entire Bears organization is in full-blown emergency mode. A $76 million Pro Bowler might be packing up and heading out and you won't believe where. Meanwhile, a rookie nobody saw coming just got labeled a secret superstar, but his future's up in the air after a brutal injury, and as if that wasn't enough, one of the highest-paid receivers on the roster is being floated in trade talks. That could completely shake up the offensive chemistry we've worked so hard to build. 3 bombshells that could reshape the future of this team. Stick around to the end, because what's coming next is something no true Chicago fan can afford to miss. And if you really love the Bears, hit that like button right now and subscribe because this community needs to stay tight during times like this. Look, I'm gonna be brutally honest with you. After the way our season ended against the Rams in the divisional round, I knew tough decisions were coming. But what I just read has me straight up stunned. Jaylon Johnson, our 2-time Pro Bowl cornerback, the guy who signed a 4-year, $76 million extension just back in March of 2024, is now being floated as a potential cap casualty. And here's the part that's got me absolutely livid. Some analysts are projecting him to land with the Detroit Lions. Let me say that again. The Detroit freaking Lions. Can you picture Jaylon Johnson wearing Honolulu blue and silver? Can you imagine one of our best defenders helping Detroit get revenge on us in 2026? Because I can't, and it shouldn't even be a real possibility, but here we are. Now look, I get the financials. We've got around $3.69 million in cap space. Sitting 21st in the league, Ryan Poles went big last year, tripled down on the O-line to protect Caleb Williams, added veteran depth on defense. Those were the right moves at the time, but now we're paying the price, and someone's gotta go. The situation with Johnson is complicated, and we've got to be real about it. Yeah, he's elite when healthy. He made back-to-back Pro Bowls in 2023 and 2024. In 2023, he even earned second-team All-Pro honors with 36 tackles for picks and 10 passes defended. That's franchise cornerback-level production, no question. But here's the painful truth. In 6 NFL seasons, Johnson's only played 1 full year. That was 2024. The rest of the time, he's averaged just under 13 games a season. This past year, he only played in 7 games due to a groin injury, and when he was on the field, his PFF coverage grade was just 58.2. That's not $76 million production. That's not even average starter level. So I ask you, what do you do with a guy who has all-pro talent but can't stay on the field? Are we paying for potential or actual production? And here's what really scares me. Johnson's only 27. That means if we cut him and he bounces back fully, he could give someone else like Detroit 3 or 4 years of elite football. Mike Payton from A2Z Sports said the Lions need cornerback depth. And if Johnson returns to his pre-2025 form, he could be a huge asset for them. Picture this. It's the 2026 season. We're at Ford Field. Caleb Williams is throwing to the end zone, and who picks it off? Jaylon Johnson, wearing a Lions jersey. That image makes me sick. But it could be our reality if Ryan Poles decides cap space matters more than keeping elite defensive talent. This is one of those decisions that defines a franchise. Are we a team that bets on talent and finds creative ways to make the numbers work? Or are we a team that takes the easy way out and dumps expensive players, no matter the long-term cost? Let me remind you what the Bears are built on. Defense. Monsters of the Midway. That's our identity. Urlacher, Peppers, Hicks, those names mean something in Chicago. And when healthy, Johnson belongs in that conversation. But if we let him walk and he becomes a cornerstone in Detroit, it's not just a loss on the field, it's a gut punch to what it means to be a Bear. And here's another angle. What message does this send to the rest of the locker room? If we cut a 2-time Pro Bowler just 2 years after giving him $76 million, what does that say about loyalty in this organization? How do we convince future free agents that Chicago is the place to be if even our Pro Bowlers aren't safe? Look, I get it, football's a brutal business. Sometimes you've got to make hard calls for the greater good. But if you're gonna move on from Johnson, you better have a plan. You can't just cut your number 1 corner and expect Kyler Gordon and Tyreek Stevenson to carry the load. You need a replacement lineup. Ryan Poles has shown he knows what he's doing. He built a solid O-line, brought in Ben Johnson as head coach, and got us to the playoffs. But this Johnson decision, this is the real test. Does he know how to build a sustainable contender, or is he just putting out financial fires? Because if Johnson ends up in Detroit and returns to his 2023 form, That's gonna haunt us for years, every time he picks off Caleb. Every time he locks down Romo Duns or Luther Burden, we'll remember this moment. And I don't know if Poles is ready to live with that, but I also get the flip side. If we keep Johnson and he only plays 7 or 8 games next season, we just burned almost $20 million in cap space that could have gone elsewhere. It's a risk either way. So what should Chicago do? First, have a real conversation with Johnson about his health. Can he stay on the field? Is there something structurally wrong that's going to keep causing issues if the doctors say he can return to 2023 form? Restructure the deal, lower the cap hit for 2026, and keep him. But if there are serious doubts about his durability, maybe it's time to move on. What you can't do is let him walk without a plan. If you cut him, you better already know who your next CB1 is, whether it's a free agent or a draft pick. Because going into 2026 without a clear plan in the secondary is asking for disaster, especially in a division with Jared Goff and Jordan Love slinging it. And let me be clear about one more thing. If Johnson ends up in Detroit and torches us, that's not just a football problem. That's a Chicago pride problem. This city doesn't forget that kind of mistake. Bears fans have long memories, and if Poles screws this up, he's gonna hear about it every time Johnson makes a play against us. So here's my final take. Do everything you can to keep Jaylon Johnson. Restructure, renegotiate. Dig under the couch cushions for cap space if you have to, but don't let him go to Detroit. Don't hand our division rivals another weapon to use against us, because the last thing Chicago needs is to watch another one of our stars shine in the wrong jersey. Now, after all that heavy stuff with Johnson, let me shift gears and talk about something that's got me both fired up and seriously concerned. Azie Trapilo, our rookie left tackle that nobody saw coming. Pro Football Focus just named Trapilo the Bears' secret superstar of 2025. And let me tell you, there was nothing secret about what this kid did in the second half of the season. He was flat out phenomenal. But here's the gut punch. Trapilo tore his patellar tendon in the final 2 minutes of the wild card game against the Packers. There's a real chance he won't be ready for the start of next season. And that puts left tackle right back near the top of Chicago's off-season priority list. Let me give you the full picture of why this is both exciting and frustrating. Trapilo didn't start 2025 as the #1 guy. In fact, there were legit concerns that he couldn't even win the left tackle job in training camp. I remember the chatter people were questioning if we wasted a second-round pick on a guy who couldn't even crack the starting lineup as a rookie, but everything changed in Week 12. Trapilo stepped in as the starting left tackle and instantly stabilized one of the most critical positions in all of football. And let me ask you, do you understand the pressure of that situation? You're protecting Caleb Williams' blind side. The future of the franchise is literally in your hands every snap. And this wasn't September when games are still warming up. This was crunch time. We were playoff-bound. According to PFF. From that point on, Trapilo graded out as the 6th best offensive player on the Bears and ranked top 10 among all rookie offensive linemen. For a guy who couldn't win the job in camp, that's absolutely wild. But what really impressed me about Trapilo was the timing. Playoff pressure was mounting. Defenses were dialing up extra heat, and everyone knew the rookie left tackle was gonna be a target. If you wanted to get to Caleb, you went after the rookie. It was the obvious strategy. And Trapilo didn't blink. He delivered steady, reliable snaps and was rarely the reason a play broke down. That's veteran mentality in a rookie body. That's exactly what you need in January when every snap matters. What makes Trapilo's rise even more impressive is the historical context of this position. For the Bears, let's be real, Chicago's been searching for a long-term left tackle for years. We've had stopgaps, one-year wonders, guys who flash and then disappear. We haven't had true stability at that spot in forever. And just when it looked like we finally found the answer, just when Trapilo was proving he could be that cornerstone for the next decade, the football gods hit us with a brutal injury. Torn patellar tendon is no joke. That's a serious injury that can take 8 to 12 months for full recovery. And here's the part that really worries me. Even after recovery, some players never get back to the same level. The explosiveness, the lateral movement, it can all take a hit. So I ask you, what does Ryan Poles do now? Do you bet it all on Trapilo making a full recovery and being ready for training camp 2026? Or do you play it safe and look for another option at left tackle, either in free agency or the draft? Because here's the real dilemma. If Poles does nothing and just hopes Trapilo's ready, and then he's not, or worse, He's not the same player. We just wasted an entire offseason without addressing a critical need. But if Poles spends big on another left tackle and then Trapilo comes back healthy and elite, now we've got a cap and depth chart problem we didn't need. It's a no-win situation any way you slice it. If I were Ryan Poles, I'd be having serious conversations with the team doctors about Trapilo's recovery timeline. You need to know, with as much certainty as possible, when he'll be ready and what level he'll be playing at. If the medical staff says there's a good shot he's ready by September, and the rehab's going well, maybe you just need a solid backup as an insurance policy. But if there's any doubt, any sign this could be a long-term issue, then you've got to act aggressively in free agency or the draft. You can't go into 2026 with uncertainty at left tackle. Not with Caleb Williams entering year 2. Not when we're trying to build a real championship window. And here's another layer: even if Trapilo comes back fully healthy, what about his confidence? An injury like that, especially for a young player, can mess with your head. It can make you play more cautious, less aggressive, and at left tackle, where you need to be violent and dominant every snap, playing scared is a recipe for disaster. Look, I want to believe Trapilo's gonna come back stronger than ever. I want to believe this injury is just a tough chapter in what'll be a great story. But I'm also realistic about the odds and the risks. What gives me hope is what Trapilo already showed us in that second half of the season. He showed mental toughness, solid technique, and the ability to perform under serious pressure. Those traits don't disappear because of an injury if the body heals. The mind is already where it needs to be, but here's my final concern: what if Trapilo doesn't return until mid-season 2026? What do we do then? Who protects Caleb Williams for those first 8 or 10 games? Because you can't just throw anybody out there and hope for the best. Caleb needs consistent protection if he's going to develop into the franchise QB we all believe he can be. So my advice to Ryan Poles is this: prepare for the worst, hope for the best. Identify backup options in free agency who can step in and play at a competent level if Trapilo's not ready. But don't spend premium draft capital on a left tackle unless the doctors tell you Trapilo's gonna have long-term issues. And for Trapilo, my message is simple: take your time with the recovery. Don't rush it. This injury could define your career one way or another. If you push it and come back too soon, you could end up with chronic issues that haunt you for years. But if you rehab the right way, follow every step of the protocol, you can come back and be the left tackle the Bears need for the next decade, because that's what's really at stake here. Not just the 2026 season, but the long-term future of this franchise. If Trapilo comes back and plays like he did in late 2025, we've got a cornerstone locked in for years. But if this turns into a recurring issue, we're right back in the endless search for left tackle stability. And I don't know about you, but I'm tired of searching. I want Trapilo to be the answer. I want this injury to be just a tough chapter in a great story, but only time will tell if that's realistic or just wishful thinking from a desperate fan. And now we get to the story that's probably going to spark the most debate. DJ Moore is being floated as one of the top trade candidates across the entire league. Let me be clear right off the bat, this shouldn't surprise anyone who's been paying attention. And if you watched that final throw from Caleb Williams against the Rams, the one that ended in a pick and killed our season, you saw exactly why this conversation is happening. Moore and Williams clearly weren't on the same page, and that's not new. It's been a recurring issue all season long. Bradley Locker from Pro Football Focus listed Moore as a top trade candidate, and his reasoning is brutally accurate. Let me read you what he wrote. Moore was elite after being traded from Carolina to Chicago, earning a PFF overall grade of 89.0 in 2023, but over the last 2 years, that number's dropped to 73.5, including a 70.8 receiving grade in 2025. The 2025 season was rough for Moore. He posted a career-low 1.24 yards per route run, and his highest drop rate since 2021 at 4.7%. On top of that, questions about his effort on routes kept popping up even in the playoffs against the Rams. And here's the part that really stings, with Moore carrying a $28.5 million cap hit, while ranking as the 4th best receiver on the Bears. That value doesn't line up. 4th best receiver, let me say that again. DJ Moore, making $28.5 million, is the 4th best receiver on our roster behind Romo Duns, Luther Burden, and probably Keenan Allen when he's healthy. So I asked you, how do you justify paying someone $28.5 million when they're your 4th best option? How do you explain that to fans watching this team struggle with cap space? But here's where it gets really complicated for me, because it's not just about the numbers. It's about what Moore represented when he got here, when Ryan Poles made that trade with Carolina, bringing in Moore and the #1 overall pick. That became Caleb Williams. We all thought we'd solved our WR1 problem for years. Moore had been consistently productive in Carolina despite playing with some pretty rough quarterbacks. The logic was, give him a real QB and he'll be unstoppable, and in 2023, that's exactly what happened. Moore was electric. That 89.0 PFF grade doesn't lie. He was one of the best receivers in the league, but something changed in 2024, and it got worse in 20-5. I think part of the issue is chemistry with Caleb Williams, and I'm not blaming either one specifically. Sometimes the talented players just don't click the way you need them to. The routes Moore runs aren't the ones Caleb wants to throw. The timing's off. The trust isn't there. And that brings us to the big question. Can this be fixed, or is it time to move on? Look, I get the argument for keeping Moore. He's 28, still in his athletic prime, and when he's locked in, he can be a dominant receiver. Plus, we've already invested so much in him, both in draft capital and money, that cutting or trading him feels like admitting failure. But I also get the other side. If Moore isn't working with Caleb, and we've got younger, cheaper receivers who are producing more, why are we forcing it? Especially when we could trade Moore for a second-round pick, free up that $28.5 million in cap space, and use those resources to strengthen other parts of the roster. And here's what really has me thinking: Rome Odunze and Luther Burden. These two guys are the future of our receiver room. They're young, they're on cheap rookie deals, and they've both flashed WR1 potential. If we're building around Caleb Williams long term, doesn't it make more sense to develop chemistry with these guys instead of trying to force it with Moore? But here's my biggest concern with trading Moore. What message does that send to Caleb Williams? Your most experienced receiver, the guy who was supposed to be your go-to weapon, is gone after just 2 years. Does that help or hurt Caleb's development? If I were Ryan Poles, I'd sit down with Caleb and have a real conversation about this. You need to know if Caleb thinks he can make it work with Moore, or if he'd honestly rather move on, because at the end of the day, we're building this team around Caleb. His opinion matters. And then there's the trade market for Moore. If we're gonna move him, we need real value in return. A second-round pick sounds good on paper, but is that enough for a guy who, at his best, is a Pro Bowl caliber receiver? Or should we be asking for more? Teams like the Jets, Steelers, anyone desperate for receiver help might be interested. But are they willing to pay what Moore's worth? Or are they gonna lowball us because they know we're tight on cap space? Because here's the reality: everyone in the league knows Chicago's in a tough financial spot. They know we need to clear cap. That puts us in a weak negotiating position. And I don't want to see Ryan Poles forced into a bad deal just because we're desperate. So what's the right move here? I think it depends on a few things. First, can Moore and Caleb fix their chemistry this offseason? If both guys are committed to working together, learning each other's tendencies, building that trust, maybe it's worth giving it one more shot. But that only works if both sides are all in. Second, what kind of trade value can we get? If someone's offering a first-rounder or a second plus a little extra, you've got to seriously consider it. But if all we're getting is a third or fourth, maybe it's better to keep Moore and try to make it work. Third, how does Ben Johnson feel about this? As the new head coach, Johnson needs a voice in this decision. If he thinks he can get the best out of Moore in his system, give him that chance. But if he watches the tape and says he'd rather roll with the young guys, you listen to that too. And here's my personal take. I think it's probably time to move on, and I don't say that lightly. Moore was exciting when he got here, but the numbers don't lie. A 70.8 receiving grade, 1.24 yards per route for 0.7% drop rate, and being the fourth best receiver while making $28.5 million, that just doesn't work. And this is important. The concerns about his effort on routes aren't new. If a player isn't giving full effort on every snap, especially in the playoffs, that's a culture problem, and Ben Johnson is trying to build a culture of excellence in Chicago. You can't have your highest paid receiver taking plays off. So my recommendation to Ryan Poles is this: actively explore the trade market for Moore. Talk to teams. See what kind of offers are out there. If someone's willing to give you a second rounder or better, you probably take it. Use that cap space to beef up the O-line, add defensive depth, or extend young guys like Rome Odunze before they get expensive. And for Moore, if he ends up getting traded, I wish him the best. It's not his fault things didn't work out here. Sometimes the fit just isn't right, but for Chicago, we need to move forward and build around the guys who clearly have chemistry with Caleb Williams. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. It doesn't matter how much talent you have if that talent isn't working together, and right now, Moore and Williams just aren't clicking the way we need them to if we're gonna be real contenders. So there you have it. 3 stories that could completely reshape the Chicago Bears roster heading into 2026. Jaylon Johnson possibly heading to Detroit. Can you live with seeing a 2-time Pro Bowler in Lions blue and silver? Or do you think Ryan Poles needs to find a way to make the numbers work and keep him in navy and orange? Azie Trapilo emerging as a secret superstar only to suffer a devastating injury. Do you trust he'll fully recover and be the left tackle of the future? Or do you think Chicago needs to look for another option this offseason, and DJ Moore being floated as a top trade candidate after ranking as the 4th best receiver? While making $28.5 million, is it time to move on and go all in on Rome Odunze and Luther Burden? Or do we give Moore one more shot to make it work with Caleb Williams? These are the questions that are gonna define our offseason, and I want to hear what you think. Drop your takes in the comments. What would you do if you were Ryan Poles? Who do you keep? Who do you trade? Who do you cut? And if you really love the Bears, if you want to be part of this growing community, do me a favor right now. Take a second and hit that subscribe button. Because this isn't just a YouTube channel. This is a family. We're Chicago fans who live and breathe navy and orange, who suffer together in the losses and celebrate together in the wins. And I promise you tomorrow, next week, all off season long, we're gonna have more breaking news, more tough decisions, more passionate debates about the future of this team we love. You don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss being part of these conversations, because at the end of the day, the Bears are more than just a football team. They're part of Chicago's identity. And this community we're building here is part of that. So hit subscribe. Drop a like if you agreed with anything I said, or even if you didn't but respect the passion. And share this video with other Bears fans who need to hear this, because together as a community, as a family, we're gonna get through this offseason. We're gonna debate every move. We're gonna break down every decision. And when September comes and the Bears take the field at Soldier Field, we'll be ready to back them like only Chicago can. Bear down, family. I'll see you in the next video.